that's it. I guess you know how to do it the new way with CSS clamp, which is very convenient, and you see it to be one-liner, and you can use this for any CSS property that use length. Welcome everybody to a new CSS video, and today I'm going to talk to you about CSS clamp and why is it super cool and where you can use it, why it is not maybe ready for production yet. So let's go to the code. All right, so we're gonna start by creating a paragraph where I say I love CSS clamp, for instance, and we're gonna style this paragraph to be a background color of yellow, for instance. I'm gonna give it some height. If I manage to type, I'm going to give it some padding to be able to see it correctly, and I am also going to give it some margins. In that case, 1 rem and automatic, because we're going to change the width of that paragraph. So it really is useful when you're dealing with those type of blocks to be able to make it dependent on the width of your window. So in that case, I just define it to be 50% of the width of my window. And here you can see when I expand the width of my window, the paragraph expands. When I contract it, it contracts. But often when you want to deal with like super large screen and small screens, you want to define like a minimum value and a maximum value. So in that case, you go in and just say minimum width is 100 pixel and max width is 500 pixel, for instance. And here you go. When you contract, you see when it reaches 100 pixel width, it doesn't contract anymore. And when you expand, it doesn't expand anymore now. It just like stays 500 pixel maximum. And basically it's this behavior that CSS clamp emulates. So rather than having to define those 3 properties, you can just go in and say my width is equal to clamp, and it's a function. So you define the minimum value first, then you define your variable thing and all those things that would be in the middle. And here you define your maximum. So if I go here and delete that part, it will be doing just the same. At 500 pixel, doesn't expand anymore, and at 100 pixel, it doesn't contract anymore. All right, so that's all good and fun. But that example with width is not super interesting because you already have those max width and min width, but it becomes very, very interesting when you go in and use it on stuff that is not supporting any min font size, max font size. So you can go in and say, oh, I want my font size in that paragraph to be minimum of 12 pixel. Then let's use to viewport width in that case. Looks good. And here we go. So as I contract my viewport width, you'll see my text becoming smaller and smaller with the minimum of 12 pixel height. And as I expand, it goes bigger and bigger. Here you can see bigger and bigger with the maximum of 18 pixel tall. So it becomes really interesting in that case where you don't want to use media queries and stuff, but you want something that might be able to respond to the width of your screen, to the percentage of whatever you use, because you can use whatever you want here. So you can use calcs function, you can use anything you want here. So that's really, really convenient. You can use rems if you want, you can use whatever you want. All right, so now comes the why maybe you should not do it yet in your production builds is support. So as of end of March 2020, Safari added support in their latest Safari release, the same for iOS Safari, which means that every major browser now supports it, but you're still stuck at around 67% of your user base or the general internet users that actually support that property. If you look at relative usage, you see it's still quite a lot of people supporting it, but you still have those two huge partial supports from Safari on iOS and Mac. And basically it does support min and the max function, but not the clamp function. So what we are going to do next is just do the same thing as the clamp function, but with the min max, which is basically the same API, but just two values out of the threes. But you can nest any function in other functions. So we're going to use this because you want to have more than 67% of the internet user base being able to see your website the way you intend it to be. So in that case, I'm going to say, I love this CSS clamp with of internet users. All right. And we are going to do the same thing, but with min-max. So in that case, I'm going to say min and max. And if you see that min and max thing, now your usage is 82%. So it's way better, but still not super exhaustive. So I'm going to show you after that how to do it if you want to support basically everyone. So I'm going to say that guy has a class, and that class is going to be clamp, for instance. Clamp, all right. And that guy is going to be called min-max, even though min-max is another function that you may remember on my CSS grid crash course. But we're going to call it min-max here, even though it's not strictly correct. So here I go here, say my clamp function gets that font size, and we're going to implement this same behavior with min and max, which allows us to have way more people being able to see the website the way you intend it to be. So if I remove the font size thing here, and I just say min max here, you'll see that my second paragraph is not variable in its font size, whereas my first one is, and that's just because I didn't define anything, but it just like shows a little bit more the difference between like standard and using like a variable font size, which is called fluid typography, sorry. So if you're interested in that thing and why you want to use this to display stuff on mobile to be like a smaller font, and on super large screen to have like a larger font, you can search for fluid typography and you'll see lots of resources there. But here I'm going to do the same behavior with min and max. So in my case, it's really simple. I just want to use the min function. Then I define my maximum value that I want and my to viewport width. So you'll see it just shrinks and expand up to 18 pixel, but it still continues to shrink as I close my window size. So we're going to just add a nesting of function here, and it's going to be the minimum of the same thing and 12 pixel. And I close all of my parentheses. And now you see that they expand on the same value. Okay. Oh yeah, sure. I just need to use maximum here in that case. And here it contracts, but stops at 12 pixel, and expand and stops at 18 pixel. So this is great. If you use this, which is a little bit less clean in term of code than that clamp, but you have like more support. So it's like way easier to implement this thing if you have to support like older browsers and stuff. If it's only for you, go for it. Use the new syntax. And as time will pass, more people will just like be supporting clamp and stuff. But for now, you are most likely better to use that min-max thing. All right. Now the thing is, min-max is still about 82% of people being able to see it. So it's basically every Chrome, most of recent Firefox, and most of Safari's, Opera and stuff. But you're still stuck with not a lot of support. You're still missing like 18%. So the way you would do it is like a little bit more old school, is to be going in and okay, I'm gonna just like create it and use media queries. In that case is I love media queries. And if you look at media queries, I don't have it like, but it is like basically everyone. If you don't support media queries, most likely you have something that doesn't support anything or is a command line browser. So it's fine. I love media queries, which is basically most internet users. All right. So we're going to do the same behavior with media queries, and you'll see two ways of doing it. The easy way, which is just define font size to be 12 pixel. And every time you expand the screen width, you're gonna just like increase the font size. So screen, and in that case, we're gonna say min width is equal to 400 pixel. You're gonna say that media has a font size of 14 pixel. And I'm gonna do this over and over. And this guy is gonna be, for instance, 800 pixel, and now we're becoming like 16. And here we are going to say 1200, and this is going to be 18. All right, so I'll just show you when you contract and expand things. So when you're just like super small, it's going to be 12 pixel, then you expand, and you see my media queries make the font size go a little bit bigger. And there we go, 18 pixel. So it is less fluid. You see you have like those breakpoints, which are defined here with the min width. And the breakpoint are really like, hey, you are like 1 pixel more. You have like a different way of displaying something, which might be fine because people usually don't vary their screen width, but it also means that you have to worry about those breakpoints and be very careful about it. Whereas if you have like a fluid transition, something a little bit smaller will be just a little bit smaller, something a little bit bigger will be a bit bigger, and you don't have to worry and watch those breakpoints. But I'm going to show you how you can have like exactly the same behavior with media queries, because yeah, it is way more verbose to write in code, and it might be complicated. And if you go like in super huge project, having those media queries and stuff are might be difficult. And by the way, I would recommend sending the font size on the HTML root, so you can use rams everywhere else and just like change it on one place. But yeah, so we are going to call it fluid typography, and this is the way you would do it in the before clamp era. Sorry. I love fluid typography, which basically is the same as doing the media queries thing. But in that case, it's going to be called fluid. Here we go, fluid, fluid, fluid. And I'm going to remove that guy because I don't really need it anymore. And here, fluid typography. And what we're going to use is in that middle ground in between 12 and 18, we're going to use the calc function, which is supported by pretty much everyone. So around 98%. So that's great. And inside that calc, we're going to use the viewport width, which is 95%. So this is typography for 95% of users, which is like basically everyone. And we're going to do it. And in that case, I know those values. Oh, okay, I'm going to say to viewport width to be exactly the same as before, and we'll see how to fix this. So if I do this, when I retract, you see all of my text retract. The big problem here is you need to make sure those breakpoints and those value matches, because otherwise you would like to see that fluid typography shrink a little bit more than it should. And then when I go under 400 pixel, it's going to pop back in. And I'll show maybe a graph somewhere on the screen with the edits to show you what it looks like depending on the screen width. But it's not really great. You don't want people to be like, oh, I prefer using my mobile phone because I can read better. And the same applies to large screens. You see it expand and expands way further than 18 pixel and just retracts when you go over 1200 pixel. So it's not great because the slope of that change, the two viewport width, is too high. The slope is too high. So it's going to be overshooting on the high end and undershooting on the bottom end. But in that case, I'm going to use like the proper value for those things. So 12 pixel and 18 pixel at 1200 and 400. I know those values by heart because I'm using them basically on every project that I do, but I'm going to do a different video explaining how to get them, which is basically 1/75th of a percent of the viewport width. Then I'm going to add 9 pixel to that thing. And now, if you look at it, we're going to have exactly the same behavior. It's going to go from 12 to 18 and stopping at 1200. So here we go. And we can, of course, use that guy in our calculation here. And you'll see they have exactly the same growth pattern, whether they are clamped, min-maxed, or media queries. And they shrink in between 400 pixel wide of the viewport width and 1200. So yeah, that's it. I guess you know how to do it the new way with CSS clamp, which is very convenient, and you see it to be one-liner, and you can use this for any CSS property that use length. You can see it to have like with the min and max functions, which allows you to have like 82% of internet users, and you know how to do it with media queries, which basically covers everyone but is way more verbose. So yeah, I hope you learned something today, and I'm gonna follow up this video by another one explaining how to get those numbers here. All right, I hope to see you in the next video. Cheers!